episode this afternoon. We could do that.
Cool. All right.
Cool.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Is that episode 2? Or have we
Yeah.
done 2 yet?
Yeah. It's the second part of episode 2.
Right. Okay. Cool.
And here we are. It's a Monday morning, and we're doing an episode of Dualistic Unity Raw. Honestly, I'm just having a good day. My house is coming together, and I'm feeling pretty good about the day. And you know what's funny is I don't have any reason. Like, I'm sitting here drawing a total fucking blank. And I'm just making the decision right now. I'm feeling really good about the day. I mean, the fact is I could find things to bitch about, I'm sure. I could look around my house and go, that's not done. That's not done. That needs to get fixed. Oh, God, why haven't they done this yet? Blah, 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 blah. I could do all of that. I kind of just did very quickly in my head as kind of as an example. But really, why? I mean, that doesn't change any of it. Sure, those things need to get done, but why be bitter about it? Why be pissed off? Like, it's not done yet. Like, what am I here for? What is my life all about if not the unfolding process of each and every fucking day? And if I had nothing to do, if I had nothing to think about, if I had nothing to bitch about, I I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't enjoy that as much, you know? And it's just because when you take all your preferences out of things, you really enjoy doing stuff. You really enjoy getting involved with things. Like this place that I moved into, it's a little bit older, and the closets are built into the wall in my room. And in those closets, there's a dresser, which is great. It's built right into the wall, very convenient. But behind the dresser, there's a gap where they haven't closed it off exactly inside the closet. And so I'm like, fuck, my cat could get in there. And so I've got to close that off. That's it. That was the whole thing. So I got to close that off. Now I could let that bother me. I could bitch that they haven't done it. I could, put it on the task list, like, oh, I got to get this done right away. Or I could just go, yeah, that's part of it. And I look forward to getting that done. At some point, I look forward to that being a project on a day where I don't have much to do. You know, those days where you're just like, it's bored. I'm bored. It's raining and I can't go anywhere and blah, blah, blah. Those are days where you could fill with shit that you could do otherwise. Those are days that you could fill with shit that you could do inside the house. Like there's always stuff to do and there's always a different way to look at it. Just don't make it heavy. Just don't make it heavy. And it's not just wandering around your house, it's all the time. I mean, you could go out with friends, be sitting there around a table having beers, everybody's talking, everybody's laughing, and all of a sudden you are thinking about something that pissed you off earlier in the day. Or you're thinking about shit that somebody said to you last week or yesterday, or a comment someone left on your Instagram, and you just bring it in. And all of a sudden, you feel removed from the laughter. You feel removed from your friends. You feel removed from the environment. And you feel like there's a weight and that your life sucks because you got to deal with this fucking thing. But up until that moment where you brought it basically, you brought it to beer with you, everything was just fine. You don't have to invite all that shit to come and drink beer with you. You don't have to invite all that shit into each and every moment. You can just live your life and decide it's a good day because you're not carrying all that shit with you. You don't need a reason.
Well, fucking said. And because also, you go through, say there is something that you're thinking about, worrying about, stuff you got to do. Say you get all that done. It's like, then what? It's like, then you got it done. And then, but there's other stuff that you're going to keep worrying about. Like there's an infinite line of things that you can focus on that should be happening that aren't happening right now, that you have to do that you can't do right now. So like, that's always going to be there. Like no matter what, it's going to exist in potential. Like even, and I've had situations in the past where like I'm feeling good and like someone else isn't as much, and then I feel bad about feeling good. And so like even when you are at a point where you want to be, like you'll still be able to come up with something that's wrong, that's incorrect, because like your mind's always able to do that. Like no matter what thing that you're focused on right now in your head, even if it, ends up perfect, you get it done, whatever, the thing happens and you crush it, and you tie it up like a present and you put that one away, there's going to be something next. Like there's going to be something else, and it's always going to be there. So it's always in potential. And so like this this morning I was just, I don't know, thinking more about just reality, I guess, and how much just like what we do and focus on, it's kind of like a willing distraction, like a necessary distraction, like it's part of it, like to be able to interact, to have experience, like I have to distract myself from the fact that I'm just interacting with myself all the time. And so this whole, like, all of the ideas that I come up with about myself, about things, there's a point that it's like, and I don't know if it's necessary, but like there's some degree of it that's almost a requirement for experience. And so it's just comes down to how seriously we take that. Like, say one splits to two, and then as one, or number two, thinks it can have control over number one, there's going to be crazy ass shit. But like, because it's it thinks that it's separate from it. And so that's why, and so when I broke it down back to that, I was like, fuck, that is really where control come from. It's like one splitting to two into, say, 10. Because when it's kind of easier to, you know, imagine when it's that point. And so the more deviations there is, the more complex the distraction is, and the less likelihood there is of being willing to let go of that control. Recognize that as you do drop that, you settle into the one thing that's happening at all times. And it's you happening at all times. And so it's not even this timeline of like 1 to 2 to 5 to 10 to 100 to a million to a billion to whatever. It's like right now is the only point that is not on this, like, oh, we've gotten deeper and deeper into, you know, ego or whatever. We're deep into the ego. It's like, in a sense, yeah, but like in another sense, not at all. It's just a lot of complexity now, a lot of deviations right now, but there's always been deviations. It's not like there's more deviations right now, even. Like, I think about it like, oh, the earth expanding and growing, but like in infinity, like there's always that potential. And so right now it's not even like we're deep into anything whatsoever, besides how much our environment believes that it can be in control. And so that's going to then, I don't know, influence, and I say our environment, just how much I think I can be in control, more or less. But anyway, that somehow tied into what you were saying, and I don't remember.
It ties in perfectly because see, this is the point, is that if we were to all suddenly wake up to how invested we are in our ego, in this idea of control and this perception of separation, if all of a sudden we were to have a collective conversation where we all go, oh, wow, did we ever get carried away? We could all change reality, change the world, change society, change the system today. Because all the things are there. We have all the things. We have power. We have houses. We have things that work. We have inventions. We have electricity. We have all this stuff. We have medicine. We have hospitals. We have police officers. We have firefighters. We have all of these things. What we have is a system that takes all that shit and turns it to ash, right? And turns it into something that can become corrupt, something that takes advantage of people, something that isn't meant to necessarily help, but is used as a political tool. See, all of these things are fine on their own. This is an argument I've had for a very long time. In general, is like, oh, so what? You want us to go back to the Stone Age? Are you a fucking tool? No, we have all this stuff. What am I saying? Like, turn everything into ash. We got to go back to the forest now. Now, take off your clothes, run into the wilderness naked with me. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if we change our mentality, then all of a sudden, a lot of the things that are corrupted through that mentality stop being corrupted and they go back to serving their purpose. I've made the point about police officers quite frequently, actually, and how police officers have changed over time. Now, they might not even be from your state or city. They may have moved there for the job, right? They may not be a local person who's known you their whole life. They may not be somebody who's going to show you a little empathy because they knew you just broke up with your wife, because they knew that you just, you know, you and your mom are arguing or something like that. Like, police officers have changed over time. Once upon a time, they were just local law enforcement. It was like your town sheriff and his deputy, and you knew them. And why? Because you trusted them to enforce the peace, right? To help maintain the peace. It's not that they were there to uphold bylaws or corporate policies, which is what a police officer is. It's not a peace officer. Remember that. There's a big difference between a peace officer and a police officer. A peace officer is instructed to enforce the peace, to maintain the peace. That's their job, right? Which is why if you're not breaking the peace, they can't fuck with you. If you're not breaking the peace, they cannot fuck with you. And you can ask them, am I in any way breaking the peace? And if they say no, then they can't fuck with you. But if you admit to being a part of the corporation that they are enforcing the policies of, if you identify as being a part of that corporation, now they can tell you what to do, whether you're breaking the peace or not, because you're a part of the corporation. That has nothing to do with the peace. They are enforcing policy of the corporation of the city of Los Angeles, or the corporation of the state of Colorado, or the corporation of the government of the United States. Because if you look, you'll always find those words in front of all of those things, despite the fact that we don't think about them that way. And that's what I mean. Becoming aware of that, you're like, hold up, wait a minute. That sounds really convoluted, and I don't like it. That sounds like there's a lot of room for people to do a lot of shit that they shouldn't be doing with my life, when it should be just about keeping the peace. And see, that's the point. If we were to all collectively recognize that, as a friend of mine once said, it would be a no thank you revolution. No thank you. Yeah, I'm still going to do what I do. I'm still going to, make the product that I make. I'm still going to provide the service that I provide. I'm just not going to do it for your filthy fucking debt dollars. I'm not going to do it for your fucking, tax program. I'm not going to do it for all that. I'll do it for trade. I'll do it for barter. I'll figure out a way to work with my fucking neighbors where I don't need you to be the middleman that takes a little cut each and every time. And of course, if you can't take that cut, then you show up with your enforcers. It sounds like the fucking mafia, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, but like, and there's a big part of the world that doesn't want to look at that stuff at all. Like, they don't want to hear that at all. And so because as you're saying, I'm like, I know plenty of people who don't even want to consider anything about the system being like fucked up or weird, or like if you bring it up, it's like, yeah, what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do? And it's like so quick. It's so quick, and it's like, hold on, that's some crazy ass shit I just brought up. Like, you know what that means? Like, stop. You're questioning my false certainty. You're questioning my false sense of safety, false sense of security. And it's like, until shit goes down in which there's a situation that you're dealing with that and the absurdity of that, you're not going to want to look at it or question it. And so there's plenty out there who don't. And I guess there's starting to be enough that are willing to question, even just recently, with like all the COVID stuff and all how that all went down, and big pharma and politics and people, like, there's as there's things that are done, I think, that are more and more extreme of like control, and you could even say that whole thing was just like to make fucking money. Like, greedy motherfuckers wanted to put out a vaccine, so they turned this thing and were able to maintain a little bit more control. But as the system, as we get greedier and greedier with thinking that we are in control, despite like not at all, like any given fucking day, like one of these crazy motherfuckers could drop a nuke like anywhere, like, and it wouldn't be able to be stopped. Like, we think that there's this control and safety, but like something crazy like that could happen. Maybe it's less likely to get eaten by a tiger, especially in the US, but like those things are still in potential. And like, we just don't even want to look at that or face that. But it's like the blowback or the willingness to question or be more open goes hand in hand with like the other extreme of control or desire for, yeah, certainty and safety and security. And like, it's all breaking down or becoming crutches for our need to pay attention at all times. And so as that gets further and further, we're paying less and less attention to what's actually happening. And so inevitably there's going to be stumbles, falls, but like, we're willingly like I was saying, it's like a willing distraction in a sense that we've become incredibly invested in, and then gone to the extreme of thinking that, me as an individual can be in control of anything that's happening, like, whatsoever. And we're seeing the blowback in a lot of ways of that. Like, it feels like we're getting close to the extreme of that belief in control being a thing, and so many variations too. Like, there's so many variations of feeling like you're in control. Like, I've just in my own life felt different ways that I've let go, and then different ways that I'm still holding on, and I'm more sensitive to those things now. So, like, they're more in my face, so it's harder to distract myself from, which was just a thing I was able to do for a long time. And we're able to kind of continue to, and as things happen, maybe something in your favor, there's a little bubble of, oh, maybe I can control some stuff here. And then as that expands, it's like there's more and more of an illusion of that. But we see it in our own life too. Even just moment to moment, like feeling down versus feeling good. It's like our attention shifts. As we're feeling down, it's like we're paying sometimes more attention. And as we're feeling good, we're just like, you know, not paying as much attention. There's almost like a back and forth to that. So anyway.
So this is a really good point, and this is something that I like to look at it in this way. Um, it's like you were saying, we're not deeper into the ego. We are always just as capable of recognizing freedom, of recognizing what is, all the time, in each and every moment. So it's not that the problem has changed; it's that there are more moving parts because you have the capacity. So let's just imagine that there's this black void, and in that black void you have this one string of light, and it's vibrating back and forth. It's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and that back and forth is whether or not it's taking itself seriously, so it's getting lighter, or or heavier, so it's getting heavier as it takes itself seriously, or lighter as it takes itself less seriously. And so it's just going back and forth. And so that's reality in a nutshell. That's what we're doing. We're oscillating between these two things, consciously, subjectively. And now that's really simple to understand, but then you add another light beside it. Now you've got two of them, and they might be oscillating at different speeds. They might be oscillating in different directions, right? But occasionally they sync up. It's kind of like if you kind of like how tuning forks sync, right, over time. Well, occasionally they'll sync up, and they'll start working together, which is what we do as people. Now, it takes time for that to happen because, of course, they're oscillating in different ways. It's kind of like watching swings. You ever watch swings when like you throw a bunch of swings, they're going in different speeds and shit, and all of a sudden they start evening out. That, right? That happens over time, and that's what happens in relationships. Is that if we just spend enough time together, we start to find an equilibrium. Now add more points of light vibrating at different speeds. Now it takes longer for them to oscillate, and sometimes they oscillate, farther away, farther into the heavy shit, or farther into the lighter shit. But there's 8 billion points of light on this planet, right? And so not only are they all oscillating individually, but we're all oscillating together to some degree in some large, huge fashion that we just don't recognize. But we've always been leaning towards the serious, or at least we have been for a long time in terms of generations. We've been leaning towards taking ourselves seriously. We've been leaning towards the one side. But now some of those points are oscillating the other way, and the rest of them are starting to go. But those are the outliers, which is why this conversation is so rare, which is why it's so hard to have people get into this discussion at all, is because this is on the other end of the spectrum, right? But it's a necessary end of the spectrum that's always come up. We've always oscillated back and forth, which is why we go from empires to smaller villages, empires to smaller villages. We go from ego to acceptance. Like this is our history as in a nutshell, right? It's just that right now, as you said, you can get really carried away with control, especially when you're good at it. Like when you start to get good at getting into control, and you're just like, oh yeah, no, we can do that. What's that? Building that dam caused a flood. We have the manpower to turn that floodplain into something that we can use too, right? And so all of a sudden, it's just one thing after another, and we controlled our entire society. We controlled the whole world to where it is right now, right? To the point where almost everything's fucking paved. And if it's not, then we're clear cutting it, or we're making it, nicely organized so tourists can walk through there, animal free, that kind of thing. And it's just been this collective swing because we're so good at it. But eventually that collective swing ends. And the reason is because as good as we might be at control, we are not in control. There are always things beyond our control. And we are seeing that all the time. Political corruption, environmental devastation. Like we're seeing the signs that there are consequences to our control that we can't fix. I mean, landfills are probably the most obvious, right? It's like just sweeping shit under the rug. Eventually it starts to pile up. Like you start to notice after a while, but we have no idea what to do with our collective garbage. None. We have no idea, right? And so these consequences are there. We just don't want to look at it because of the glory of cognitive dissonance. I'm really enjoying this, though. I'm really liking this. The benefits of the way I think are great to the point where I don't want to tie the consequences to that mentality. Like we like the idea of manifest destiny, but we don't like homelessness. Right? We like the idea of being able to, forge ahead and create your own empire and be a billionaire, but we don't like the fact of starvation. And you see, we don't tie the two together at all, despite the fact that we are all on one planet. We are all one organism. We are all interacting with each other. What I do affects you. What you do affects me. You may not see it. It may be invisible, but it's fucking there. And that's undeniable. Well, where's the science? Everywhere. Go look. Right? Like, there's nothing you can do that doesn't impact everything around you. The idea that we don't know how it impacts it is how we usually get away with it. We're just like, well, I don't know what the impact will be. Look around. Look around. Look at the common mentality. Look at the fact that more often than not, we think exactly like people did 100 fucking years ago. And if we're still thinking the same way, if we're still identifying the same way, if we're still having the same problems politically, environmentally, economically, then what makes us think that the problem isn't the same? What makes us think that we're not going to continue to go in the same direction? Because it's based on our mentality, but it's addictive. It's addictive. We've just gotten so used to this idea like, no, human beings, we can control everything. Look, we're going to go to Mars. Like, it's just so fucking funny if it wasn't so goddamn tragic. Right. And that's the point. It's just, we've just gotten carried away and we can turn it all around now, right now, in your life alone. You can actually change the flow. You can change the direction just a little bit by being one of those points of light that leans the other way. Because it may take a while for us all to sync, but it'll happen. And it really just comes down to some recognition and awareness of what it is we're doing and which way we're leaning.
Oof, well said. And then, such a big part of that is responsibility too. Like we have sort of this idea, and like you said, when someone will look around or say like, "Oh, well, yeah, it has impact, but I don't know what it is," or it's almost like with the complexity, with the variations in light, it's like impact has the appearance of getting diluted despite not being so. And so as our interactions have gotten more and more separate, it's like that's why, we have motherfuckers in comment sections just spewing crazy ass shit that they would never say in person. They would never say, over the even a video chat. And because there's like this seeming gap between ourselves and everything else, like we have this willingness to just do things without sensitivity or regard for impact outside of me. And so, but then with the focus on me, it's like, oh, I'm feeling bad. I'm going to do something to feel better without so much sensitivity for like how that may impact the rest of reality, let alone, the rest of everything in my environment. And so, but if we wouldn't take that feeling so seriously, like if we were, even as you recognize, like there's nothing that can actually confirm that you're not feeling everything all the time. You're not feeling exactly what everyone else is feeling all the time without being able to have that certainty. It's like everyone you're interacting with could feel very, very, very similarly to how you feel right now, but you're taking all of the weight on for that thing, but it goes hand in hand with then our actions because of that. But how much would our actions change if we were in a situation where we were feeling a certain way and could recognize that, oh yeah, I'm not separate from anything. So like everything's feeling this. Like how much of a different action would that be? And this goes for everything. It's not just like, in a room with 10 people. It's like everything all the time, because that's where empathy comes in. 'Cause it's like, okay, if I'm feeling this way and like I'm in the situation I'm in, this person is probably really feeling well. And again, it's like still presumptive in a sense, but if there is no division, then I'm translating something into a story that everyone else is going through. And then there's so much more empathy or just willingness to let go of your concern about yourself, or let go of how seriously you take yourself. And that goes hand in hand with how much you feel like you're in control of, even like in control of how I feel. Cause that's something that I feel like we really think that we can be despite never being able to. Like I can control what I think, and I can control how I feel. It's like none of those have ever been the case. We're constantly having random ass shit pop into our head, getting random ass waves of feelings like, oh my God, I'm so fucking anxious right now and I don't know what it is. And so I'm gonna try and make sense of it. But when you hold on, fucking like, wait a second, where was I fucking going to that?
Control
Getting
of our feelings.
control, yes, of thoughts and feelings, and this assumption that we can control like what pops into our head and those feel, and that's like it's like a unexplored component. Is like, okay, so you're in control of all this stuff, and everything is kind of in response to how you're feeling and what you're going through. And yet we see people who think they're in this massive state of control, like they've just been able to, holy fuck, like someone who's, say, feels down about themselves. Like if they didn't have the means of feeling like they could be in control, maybe that goes to the extreme of, you know, suicide. If they feel like they have control, they can then, continue to distract themselves from that core feeling with, oh, buy this thing, get adoration from this, adoration from that, and kind of create this whole thing. But it doesn't make it go away. It doesn't make those things go away. There's just now like a weight, a bunch of walls of distraction from that, from feeling like, no, I can be in control of what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. And we see it all around. Like, just think positive thoughts, positivity affirmations, change your, and there's this sort of assumption with like our brain. We have, we can rewire our brain, which isn't, it's not like that's not the case, but to think moment to moment that you have control of how you feel and what you think will never be the case. Like that shit's gonna come and go, come and go, come and go, come and go, come and go. It's gonna constantly be shifting, changing. But when we believe that we can control it, it's like we get in there and turn it, like almost like turn it into something that it wouldn't otherwise be. For like, oh yeah, this is gonna it's gonna come and go. Yeah, there, oh, here it comes and there it goes. I can't do anything about it. I can't control it. And so you don't dig in. But as soon as it's like, no, I can control this, you dig in. But if you hadn't, it wouldn't have happened in that way.
It's funny, isn't it? Right? And that's it. Most of what we're experiencing, and we've said this before, is our response to what I'm feeling. Right? It's like, I don't like that. Now I'm experiencing all of my fear and all of my resent and all of my, my unhappiness about what I don't like, as opposed to what I was feeling before I decided how I felt about it. Isn't that funny? It's like I'm feeling something. Now, how do I feel about how I'm feeling? And that's what I get lost in, is how I feel about how I'm feeling, instead of just letting the feeling pass. And that's the entire reason we say, like, slow down, stop making assumptions. And this is something that happens all the time. Going back to going out for beers with your friends, sitting there, and all of a sudden that thought comes in about Gladys, who said something bitchy to you this morning, over the water cooler or whatever, and you're like, fucking Gladys, right there. Just don't voice it. Just don't dwell on it. Just go, right. Look down at your beer or look at your friend laughing. And then if you can't get out of the thought, just wait. Just wait. I've actually watched this happen. It's fun when you really start to realize that it's happening. It's kind of like crawling out of something. Like, you can be so lost in your thoughts and then just focus on something that's actually happening in front of you. And it's like the person's lips are moving and you're still not catching what they're saying at all. And so you're looking at like their face and you're looking at their facial features. And as you do, you start to get a little bit more of what they're saying. And then all of a sudden a little bit more comes through and you're paying it. And all of a sudden it's like you've come out of the fucking water and you're breathing and you're talking to the person. You're like, holy fucking shit. And it really does feel like you're crawling out of your mind. Right? And it's just because we're so used to entertaining that mind. We're so used to entertaining those thoughts that we actually give them reality. They are as real as we want them to be. And the more we focus on them, the more we convince ourselves that they're worthy of our focus, the more real they become. Right? And that entire time you can just let it pass. Right? Just let it pass and don't reinvest in the idea that that's more valuable to you than the moment that you're in. Because that's the temptation, right? It's like, but if I don't think about this, what then? It's like, well, then you're here where things are happening. And this is what you have right now. Because there is a certain degree of thinking that's useful and a certain degree of thinking that's just obsession, right? Like as thoughts pop up, that can be useful. When you dwell upon them after they've popped up, that can become obsession. It's like you're looking for that little extra juice. It's like, oh, right, I totally forgot. I got to do that tomorrow. Well, how am I going to do all of that? And what's going to happen after the fact? And what are they going to think about me doing that? And all of a sudden, it just gets expanded into this nightmare of a fucking fictional world where originally it was just like, oh, right, I got to do that tomorrow. So thoughts can be useful. It's our doubt that makes them balloon. It's our doubt that turns fictions into nightmares.
Oh my god, dude, so much it's like, "Oh, yeah, that thing," and then, like, "Oh, if I think about it enough, I can, like, fucking control how it happens," like, delving in to, like, beyond that, and it's bringing me back to, like, remembering how often I would I would do that. Like I said, was talking about yesterday with, like, looking forward to things too. It wasn't just, like, fears and stuff. It was, like, looking forward to, like, how good I would feel if this thing were to happen. And it's all just passing over right here, and I've gotten much better since like, literally as you were talking was feeling that, but then, like, with reading too, like, as I've been reading more, I'm noticing how much, like, I'll get caught in something. It's like, this is the only thing that's going on right now. I can't do anything about anything that keeps fucking popping into my head, and I'll go through, like, a page, and it'll be that. It'll be like, "Oh, yeah, that. How's it gonna go? How am I gonna do? What am I gonna say? Where's it gonna lead to? What's it gonna mean?" And then I'll go on this and I'll be like 3 quarters of the way down the page and I'm like, "Oh, man. Whoa." And I used to get like would get frustrated about that, but now I'm like, "Oh, wow. That's interesting. Holy shit, I really got." And I'm like usually, like before bed, just like in bed, and I'm like I look around for a second, I'm like, "Holy fucking shit. I just went on this whole fucking thing, didn't leave, can't do anything whatsoever besides, like, get up and go to the bathroom within, a minute or 2. Like, there's nothing I can do about any of the things, and it's the same right now. Like, there's nothing I can do about anything else that may flutter into my mind besides just say stuff and talk right now. Like, there's nothing else. There's no control over how it's gonna get looked at, how it's gonna get heard even, and it's fun to, like, be reminded of that when someone will bring up, like, a video they saw or something and talk about it, like, say, like a TikTok I made or someone will comment or whatever, and they'll say something that was just, like, not how I was trying to bring it across whatsoever, and I was like, "Oh, fuck. Yeah, no, everyone's seeing that, hearing that, viewing that entirely differently than I'm even bringing it across ever." Like, no matter what you do, you're kind of, like, seeing a very, very, very unique version of reality at all times, like interacting with a very, very, very unique version, like how you're viewing as you're and it's like if you're making assumptions, but even if you're not, it's still unique in the sense of like that perspective, but it's very unique in the sense of your idea of what's going on or what could be done or how things are going or how you're looking at yourself. Like it's entirely unique. And I'm getting there's more times recently where like I don't know, in the last month where I'll see a video and like of myself and kind of not recognize myself in a sense, especially with older videos, but even with current videos. And then it's like sometimes even in the moment, I'm like, I don't as much like what is that I like idea that I come up with? Like which one is it? It's like or it's like a grouping of assumptions, but it's been more just like it's more just situation like shit that goes through my head isn't as much about it's not like it's not about me, but it's about things that are happening, but it's I don't know, like less of a full-blown idea all the time. And so I don't know. Yeah.
No, that's it. Like, it's funny how few thoughts you really have in a day when it's not personal. Like, the vast majority of the thinking that we do is about the fiction of me. What does this mean about me? Where am I going? How valuable am I going to be? What are people going to see? So on and so forth. But when you really just are down to thinking about the things that you actually have to think about, like your problem solving, the actual problem solving that is involved for life, right? There's not a lot. There's not a lot. This is why, again, that George Carlin bit where he's making fun of the self help industry, and he's like, what do you need help for? This isn't that complicated. You get up, you take a shit, you go to work, you eat a meal, you do it again, right? And he's really just trying to say, like, you don't have to be making this as hard on yourself as you are, right? And it's hard to get that across because we don't recognize that this idea of ourself isn't us. We don't get it, and we are told repeatedly that it is. Told you, one of the things that's driven me nuts for years is this statement, and people put this fucking statement on a pedestal all the time. I think, therefore I am. Really? And if you stopped thinking, you'd just vanish? Like, has anybody actually questioned that statement at all? No, because we value thinking. We value our capacity for conceptualization more than the reality of our existence. The simple fact of your awareness is far more powerful than your ability to conceptualize. And if you don't believe me, go look in nature. That is the power of awareness. Everything that exists on this planet is the power of awareness. And yet, if you look at the power of conceptualization of our intellect, it's incredibly flawed. It is just inundated. It's in fact overwhelmed with this capacity and this temptation for control. And which is the reason that I like the statement from the Tao Te Ching that in nature nothing is rushed, but everything is done. I think that's perfect because that is something that we as a species could learn to emulate. But we are in such a rush. For what? For what other than a healthier relationship with our existence here and now? But we're so caught up in this fiction that you can become more, that's not what this is about at all. It's about you becoming more. It's not about you realizing how much you are. And that change in priority would change the priority of everything. And as you said at the beginning of this episode, we're not really deeper into it. The capacity is always there. It's just that there are so many moving parts. It's really easy to sync up with that side of the spectrum that's looking for control. And we have for a long time. Because as you said, the common argument to all of this is, well, that's just the way it's been done. That's the best we can do. That's it. And it's just because it's so very hard to question your environment. It's so very hard to go against the grain. It's very hard to be an outlier. At the end of the day, It's always hard. It's always been hard in every major change that's ever happened. Do you think revolutions were easy? No change worth having has ever been easy. It's always been caused by people willing to go through the shit of doing it the hard way because it was worth it to them. It was worth it to them. And that was enough. Didn't matter if people agreed with them or not. And we always have that capacity to make that choice right now. You don't need reasons any more than I needed a reason to be happy about today.
Oh, man. And going against the grain could be as basic as in a world that's fucking rushing, getting somewhere. I was picturing like someone with a bunch of papers, sprinting to get the papers to a place, and they just look around and see everyone else sprinting with their papers falling down. It could be as basic as just not sprinting, just walking, or yeah, or stopping, or repenting, going the other way. Like, it's as basic as that, and even just the willingness to not just to, like, and we were talking about this yesterday quite a bit, just, like, to go into a situation without a plan. Like, the thought of that would be the scariest thing I could imagine at a point in my life, without a doubt. Like, without a doubt, the thought of not being, quote, unquote, "prepared," it's like anything could happen. I'm not in control, but, like, that's always the case. Like, it's always the case, and it's almost tougher to realize that when people are able to almost make things go according to plan, in a sense, like, feel like they're going according to plan, and then get a response that they enjoy or appreciate, or wanted, maybe. But then there's this whole, because then it's not real freedom, right? If you got a plan, it's like it's like pre-made in a sense already in your head. It's like you created it in your head as opposed to utilized your mind in the moment. It's like you're almost making reality in your head, like, as a buffer from reality. Right now, it's like I have a sense of what's gonna happen. I've thought about this enough that I have a very good idea of how this is gonna go. And no matter how it goes, you're gonna keep believing that shit. Like, it could go dude, like, so differently than the thing in my head, but I'll still go back to that fucking little buffer, little plan. And that's kinda what it's starting to feel like, is it's a buffer from being in it. And there's a lot of things that we do and ways of thinking about ourselves and ways that we confirm it in our reality that, no, I am this thing, but that's all distraction from just being yourself right now. And that just means, like, being here, and whatever plays out, like, is being yourself. And we'll make assumptions as we go that, like, oh, well, that's not something I could do. That's not something I could do. That's not something that is can happen. I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. And so that, like, then builds this whole rigidity. And if I can come up with something that allows me to think, like, okay, I was able to come up with something and that thing didn't happen. You think it's like I caused it to not happen, but really it's just in infinite potential. Like, neither of the things would have happened on the extreme anyway. Like, what you were afraid of or what you wanted to happen didn't happen. It was like, close enough that you thought it was, or sometimes it's just not even close. Like I was saying, like, not even close at all. Just, like, completely bypass that and still go back to that just for that sense of certainty. Like, and again, because it's always, as you're planning for something in the future, it's always you're missing something right now. Like, no matter what, you can't trade. You can't, like, do both. It's always a trade. It's always a trade of control versus fucking, like, existing, like, actually experiencing reality. Because as you delve in, even planning for, like, spending 15 minutes planning for something, that's 15 minutes invested into just like this fucking made up thing in a sense that then you missed that 15 minutes of reality. And so like as priorities shift, like there's people who literally don't experience reality in the sense because it's a constant trade. And like I've done that most of my most of my life is like trading being here for some fictitious idea that if I can plan or know what's going to happen or have an idea of what's going to happen, then I can control how I feel. And like I'm not going to know how I feel when I get there anyway.
Exactly. Apologies, by the way. I know my computer just lagged significantly for about 30 seconds, so I'm hoping I'm back. Have you ever tried biofeedback?
What is that exactly?
So biofeedback's kind of like a form of meditation. Like so, what they'll do is they'll hook you up to a machine where it's usually measuring your heart rate. Let's just say, and so you are actively listening or watching a beep that goes according to your heart. So every time your heart beats, the thing either beeps or you see the little light flash. Okay, and so the point is to focus on that beep, to focus on your heart and the beep and to realize that they're synced because it's difficult to do at first because you're not used to actually feeling your heartbeat. You're not used to slowing down enough to be aware that you are your heartbeat, right? And that it's happening all the time. This is one of those classic things that you can't control. Your heart's going to keep beating, right? But we know that your mentality changes the rhythm of your heart. And the more afraid you are, the faster your heart beats. The more relaxed you are, the slower your heart beats. Right. And so in biorhythm or in biofeedback, you're given the opportunity to actually watch or listen to the thing that you are influencing through your tension or control. And so by sinking into it, what you start to do is you start to get into the rhythm of it. You actually start to feel as the thing's going to beep. You can actually start to feel your heartbeat. And as you do, you can relax into it. So you realize it's you that's beating. And that's when you start to actually gain some sense of influence over the beat, is when you recognize that it's you beating and you stop thinking about your heart beating. So it's not control in the conceptual sense, it's alignment and sensitivity. And that's the reality of intelligence, is in that, in alignment and sensitivity. And that happens in the moment when you allow yourself to be who you are now and not just get lost in the thought of who you are, which is not the same and does not have the same rhythm.
It's like really a settling in. And it's like it reminds me that like I'm already there. Like there's not somewhere to get. It's like any push or thought about somewhere else, it's like there's almost an immediate response to the heart beating. And so how much can my priority become like my heartbeats? You know, like what if that, for a day you just prioritize like how slow your heart beats. And that was the ultimate sort of fucking priority you came up with. Like there is even right now, like as I'm talking, I'm recognizing as I speed up my speaking and I start getting into things like really, really quickly, there's like a rush almost, but it's not even that there's a cadence to it because sometimes because I noticed in older videos, which we're doing a shout out doing a commentary. I don't know if we're gonna do that live or not, but yeah, commentary series. We're through what episode 1 and halfway through 2. But I noticed that in those, also proud of myself for not forgetting my point as I went into that little spiel. I'll notice that I have gaps between where I'm speaking, but it's not a like purposeful pause. It's just gaps in between as I'm like thinking about what I'm saying as opposed to just saying it. And then but then as I'm speaking, like it'll be faster paced, whereas because it's not like it's speaking in cohesion nonstop quickly. It's like gapped up pretty good, and I wonder if that would be cool if we could not that this is gonna happen because we didn't measure our heartbeats, but like could monitor that like throughout the seasons or something, like throughout the last 2 years, like how much that's changed and shifted, and like if it wasn't perfectly aligned with shit we were going through in our lives, or like how relaxed we were. And it's interesting to like try and focus on your heart as you're talking, because then you're kind of distracting yourself from what's like actually happening because you're paying attention to that. But it's interesting because that then settles you in to where you're at. And as I think of reasons that people get, that I get worked up and stressed about stuff, like to think that that's a trade-off for, like, my heart health or just, heartbeats. And there's that thing, maybe it's an order of monks who believed, or I don't know if they believe or just thought about how maybe everyone in their lifetime just has a certain amount of heartbeats. And so you think of someone whose heart's racing, it's like they're using a lot of their life very quickly, versus as it slows down, like, how much does that get prolonged, and how close is that tied to your state of relaxation? Like, is it not perfectly tied to it? And there'll be, bubbles up, and it's like, all right, I had to, you know, get into something here, or had some adrenaline going or whatever. And it's like a buildup. And it's like you start to see it more so as a payment and like an ability to do something differently than you could when you're just, you know, sat down, relaxed. And you see energy buildups as like something that's fun almost, but it's seen more as like a trade of heartbeats in a sense. There's like at least that in mind. Not to say that you always want to be like, all right, I just want my heart to be as slow as possible, because there's like, spice of life and all that good shit. But it makes the worries and the concerns when you start seeing that as like, oh, there's a trade-off right now, is like, wow, that doesn't make any sense. Of course, like, I'm gonna have probably a moment in a minute here where it feels like it makes a lot of sense to pay attention to it. But it's funny when you start to really look at like what's happening in reality, and like what's actually going on, and like start to shift those priorities more and more. Things do have a way of slowing down, because you start to see the futility in speeding up and trying to get somewhere else, because it is like, where the fuck are you going? Like, rush into the grave, that whole sort of thing. But we do that almost as like a habitual, like in a habitual sense, as a habitual distraction, and just assuming, and like kind of, I guess, cognitive dissonance plays into that, but just assuming that there is going to be a point where, I don't know, you escape, you run from the thing that you're never leaving. I don't know.
This has been a good episode so far. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I want to stop for a moment and mention that we still have a few tickets left for our Virginia Beach mini retreat. Holy Christ, my face stopped working there. All of a sudden, I'm like, what am I trying to say? And it just locked right up. Isn't that funny? As soon as you start doubting yourself, you're like, aha, slam those brakes on. This will turn out better. Don't slam the brakes on. Just run right the fuck through. It's going to be just fine. We have a retreat coming up in Virginia Beach on February 1st to February 5th. It's a mini retreat, so this lasts from a Thursday night to a Monday morning. If you can't stay to the Monday morning, that's fine. Understand that this is not your usual retreat. You're not coming to hang out with a schedule. It's not like 2 o'clock yoga, 3 o'clock meditation. That sounds fucking relaxing, doesn't it? No. Instead, it's just a time to hang out with us. Just shoot the shit at a fucking dope place on a beach. There's a giant chessboard in the backyard. There's a pool table. I believe there's a hot tub. There's a bunch of stuff. You can find the details on the website. Go to dualistiCunity.com. It's in the store, in the event section as well. You can find the details. There's also a QR code on the screen right now. The tickets are incredibly reasonable. They include all of your food as well as all of your cannabis and other assorted things. If you have any questions about the event, feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer your questions. You can also check out our community Discord, where we have a retreat plans channel, and you can ask questions there. There are a number of people on our Discord who have been to retreats, so they are happy to answer your questions as well and tell you about their experiences, which I know speak volumes. I don't even have to tell you that these retreats are fucking awesome, though I just did, because everybody will tell you, everybody who's been to them. They are awesome. They're transformative, and they're transformative specifically because you are ready to make the most of that experience. You are ready to make them transformative. You're the one who defines the retreat, not us. We're just there to hang out with you and remind you that it's frankly, it's enough to just be you. We're happy. You're happy. We're getting so much out of it because we're willing to. And that's always the case. It can always just happen right now that you just drop the load and expect and remind yourself that you are enough right now. But by all means, do question what I mean by drop the load if you're going to come to the retreat. But don't bring the weight. And if you're going to bring the weight, expect everybody there to look at it and go, "We have that weight. We put ours by the door. You can put yours with ours and enjoy the rest of this retreat. It's worth coming if you can make it."
I had the same exact thought as you're like, you can drop that load. More ways than one. Just make sure you're courtesy flushing, please. We appreciate those. Yeah, and it's funny, like, because when we first started doing the retreats, like we showed up to that first one, we were like, I have no idea. And we kind of always do that in a sense because there isn't the agenda and plan. And I'm starting to realize how much more of a beauty there is in that, because the thought of like having a set fucking routine, because we get comments and we'll post videos about them on social media and people are, wondering about it. I have a video I'm going to repost from a couple months ago that talks about that, like what our schedule is. And it's like what you want to do, what you want to do, what you want to do is, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m. Because like that's such a forgotten thing with everything we've been talking about right now, is this thought that how do I be myself? I got to look, someone else tell me what I should do, how I should act, what I should, strive for or try to become. And we're all just like fucking looking around. So us showing up with a fucking agenda is just another way you're looking around. You're like, oh, they have an answer. That's how they do their stuff or live their day. Like, don't even like Ray and I live our days quite differently in a lot of ways. And definitely don't try and emulate that in any way, shape, or form, like for either of us. But that's what people tend to do, is like they find something that works for them, and then it's like they turn it around and try and sell it to everyone else. And then because everyone's looking around, there's going to be people who latch onto that and be like, okay, that's it. But none of that is you. None of that is you being yourself. You can't look around for a way to be yourself. You can't look anywhere. You can't find it in a book. You can't find it in a video. You can't find it on social media. You can't find it on YouTube. We have no fucking idea. And I feel like I think I brought something up very similar, said something very similar yesterday, but just like I don't even know how to be myself. And when that hits me, I'm like, oh fuck, I don't know. And sometimes I'll get caught up in that, in how, like what type of person am I? How do I act? And you can't settle on that with certainty ever. Like there isn't a way to come up with you. And yet, kind of like the phrase, you got to know yourself, or like that whole spiel kind of goes hand in hand with I think, therefore I am. Like in order to know yourself, you have to think. You would still exist without thinking. You would still be yourself without thinking, without coming up with an idea of what that is. And so you can't be yourself anywhere outside of here. And you can't be yourself following anything, following any tactic or way of being. It's just like right here, what are you? And there's not a right or a wrong in that. There's not control in how it's going to be looked at or taken. And man, like as we've delved more into control, we've thought that like we can control how we're looked at. And there's such a collective of, and the myth of normalcy and all of that, like there's such a draw to being that we have kind of become very similar in a lot of ways, like every person, dressing similarly, acting similarly. And now, we have control enough to, change our face and stuff. So people are starting to look similarly in a lot of ways. But like, it's all deviations from being ourselves in so many different fucking ways. So anyway, our retreats. After all that, we're not telling you what to do. We don't know what's best for you. We're happy to chat and talk about stuff and have conversations. But even when it comes to, you know, decisions, and we see that on, video calls and whatnot, it's like we don't like have an answer ever. It's just like maybe some additional considerations, maybe. But odds are you have much better idea of what to do there, and doing that without looking around. The more you do that, which for me is like not a super common thing I've done throughout my life. It's always, check in on something, see some variation. But the less I do that, the more I'm just like, no, you know what? I'm gonna not look anywhere. I'm gonna post this. That's a rep in the tank. It's a practice. Like being yourself as much as you're always being it. It does. There are points where maybe you typically habitually would have looked around. You can be like, no, I'm being myself, and don't look around so much and just do something and see how things play out. Cause there's so much more freedom in that too. Like so much more freedom in just expressing yourself however it happens, as opposed to, no, I'm going to curate myself into this. It's not, there's no freedom in that. There's a lot of weight as soon as you look around to something else, because then there's a right way to do it. And that's not natural to you just expressing yourself. It's some deviation of what comes naturally to you as well.
This is why I like encouraging people to just come to the groups and make TikTok videos and do all that. And you may not think to yourself, well, I'm not looking for all that exposure. That's not really the point. I mean, when I first started my YouTube channel back in 2005, I wasn't actually looking to talk to anybody. I was very much looking to just express myself. And what I found was that through expressing myself and having to look at myself doing so, I had to get over a lot of my own judgments. I had to get over a lot of my urge to hit the brakes, to pull back, to resist, to hesitate, to judge myself, to project into the future. I had to let go of all of that and just go, I don't fucking know, and get into doing it for the sake of doing it. And what I found was it made it easier for me to do that in the rest of my life, frankly, because I wasn't going into those situations with the same fears because I was facing them in myself because they're just my fears. I'm like, oh God, these people are judging me. No, it's just me. And I know because every time I make a video before it's even online, I'm like, oh God, it's going out to the world. And why? It's not like anybody's sitting over my shoulder going, that sucks. People aren't going to like it. Nobody's going to like that. Like, nobody's doing that. I'm doing that. So I'm very well aware that in a conversation, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, unless that person's like, I don't like you. You're a piece of shit. But how often does that happen? Really, how often does that happen? And if it happens, then there's a few things you should ask yourself. One, who the fuck is this person? Two, where are they coming from? And three, did I do anything that was, whether it was deliberate or not, selfish, where I just was not aware of this other person as being equally valid in terms of their feelings and experience? Right. And so that's really it. But aside from that happening, just be yourself. Just be who you are and express yourself. And I want to mention right now that actually we have a hell of a reason for you to do so. If you would like to make a video about some of the insights that you're learning, about some of the things that you are going through in your day, about this process of fucking letting go of who you think you are, if you actually want to make a video of yourself in real fucking time, going, I'm terrified to do this, I'm doing it anyway, then tag Dualistic Unity in that video. Mention us somewhere in that video, and you might have a chance to win a free ticket to our California mini retreat, because that is an option we have right now. We have a free ticket to our California mini retreat up for grabs. All you have to do is have the most views on your video. That's it. Now, you never know. It's not that you have to go out there and make a video that gets millions of views, because frankly, the top video might have, 5,000, 10,000 views. That's not that many. And if you make a video, go to the community Discord, go to the Dualistic Unity channel on our community Discord and share the link to your video so the rest of the community can help as well. At the end of this month, we're going to tally up all the views and look at all the submissions, and we're going to declare who the winner is. And then we're going to get to hang out with them in person for 4 days at our California mini retreat, which is just off of Big Bear Lake. It's going to be just fucking amazing. It's going to be dope. It's in the middle of February, or it's in the middle of April 11th to April 15th. The weather is going to be fantastic. And again, we're going to be smoking a lot of weed. If you've ever wanted to learn how to roll a joint, or if you'd ever just wanted somebody to roll a lot of joints for you, this is a perfect opportunity because I love to roll and I love to show people how to roll.
Likewise, I've gotten a couple joint rolling reps in over the retreats, but we'll definitely dig into that because there's some fun to it too. It's like it becomes an art, and you kind of learn how to change it up, and you do. I mean, you taught the little divot thing in the middle, so it doesn't get pregnant. And that helps. That helps a lot. But it's fun when you just start doing stuff, like that, and it's not like, the thought it just in that specific situation, like, oh, I'm going to be the best joint roller in the world. It's like, no, it's just cool to see your progression and change. And there's so many things, in my, like, I've brought up reading a number of times, like just to see myself, like, be able to get through a couple pages in a row without, getting lost in something, or actually be able to, as I go, like, comprehend everything that's being fucking read, which sounds so funny because reading comprehension is such like a basic thing. And it's not to say that it completely went away for me, but it's, it's exists on a spectrum. And it's certainly, I was out of practice in a lot of ways, but it's so much different than how I did things throughout my life for the most part. Cause like, getting better at reading, for example, is like a internal thing. Like getting better at joint rolling is like more of a internal thing, I guess, until I guess it's still like you could still measure yourself based on that. So I guess it just comes down to your own mentality because everything could be for everyone else or for yourself. And so yeah, because even that, like, fucking A, dude, like, how much people can like, with reading books, they'll be super proud of how many books they've read or super proud of, like, they'll measure themselves based on that, like, "I've read 1,000 books in the last year, and therefore, like, look at me, and I know all these extra things," as opposed to, "Oh, I'm really enjoying this story. I'm enjoying," like, it's for me to enjoy. And that can be for everything. And it's interesting how that full circle is selflessness in a sense, because some of the reasons that we act selfishly are in response to not truly being like through focusing on other people, like that's the response to the lack of priority of myself, of being myself, of doing it for me. Because as you say that, it's like, oh, well, you're doing it for you. That sounds as selfish as it can be. But it's like, how many things are you doing keeping others in mind? There's a clip on my Instagram story I shared. It was Rick Rubin talking about, he was asked like how often he considers the inner critic of like what the audience thinks. And he said, never. He never considers it whatsoever. Like he never creates art, creates music. He's like a music producer for with the audience in mind at all. It's all just him, his expression of himself. And he said it's interesting how that oftentimes is what's best for the audience. And he went on to express how movies these days, like a lot of them fucking suck because all the producers, all they're doing are thinking about what's going to hit, what are people going to like. And it's not an individual expressing themselves authentically. So there's no authenticity in it as long as you are living with the idea of someone else or for someone else in mind. There isn't, you're going to act in a way that is inauthentic to some degree. And it's like there's a greater degree of consequences to that almost, as opposed to just acting authentically, period, like more often.
Absolutely. And I agree with you about the people who will tout how many books they read and how often. And I know a few of these people in my life where they'd be like, I read 4 books a month. That's amazing. That's fantastic. But you missed half the conversation we were just having. Right. And then it's just because you were possibly thinking about the next book you were going to read or the last book you were reading. And it's not that it's not impressive. Read. Reading's great, but don't use it as a way of valuing yourself or measuring your progress or even looking at it as an indicative of how intelligent you are. And that's the thing. Like I've had people tell me, like, I read like 3, 4 books a month. Great. How many have you written? Right? Because it's a different kind of expression, isn't it? It's very easy to sit back and just take in information. It's very different to try and express your own or even find your own. It's when you stop looking at books as being the only source of fucking knowledge that you start to realize each and every goddamn moment of your life is a lesson. Each and every moment, each and every interaction, each and every choice, each and every frustration, all of it. All of it is an opportunity for you to learn about you, your existence, life as a whole, other people, empathy. There's so much, and it's always there. So, yeah, I tend not to be as impressed by how much people read. I tend to be impressed by how much they are paying attention to where they are. Because ultimately, and again, it really depends what you're trying to learn. We mentioned this yesterday. If you're trying to learn to be a mechanic, read lots about being a mechanic. If you want to be a doctor, read a lot about being a doctor. But if you're trying to be yourself, there's no book that's going to teach you that. None whatsoever. But all of them will point at it. All of them will help you maybe find a certain direction, but eventually you have to let them go and look at the source, which is you. And that's why I say, like, don't just read books, write books. And if you think to yourself, well, what do I have to write about? That is a great question. You should go and find that out.
Yeah, because it is a very different type of expression, and when you put it like that, yeah, and there's like it's like everything has that variation of expression. Like you're kind of either taking in someone expressing something, and like those are then which isn't always someone being themselves. It's not to say like you're always taking in someone being themselves. You're taking in someone who has variations of their right way of acting, or you're expressing your right way of acting, your thoughts about the right way to act, or feeling like you're being the right way to act, but you can just express yourself. I had another point with that, but I know we're at time, so I'm gonna chill out. This has been a lot of fun though.
It's been a blast. And of course, just another exercise in expression. I've actually really enjoyed this episode for the simple fact that I haven't really been thinking about anything I've been talking about. We've just been talking. I've just been going. And it's been fun the last 2 days just launching into it because why not? What's the very worst that could happen? Somebody says, I don't like your podcast. I'm not doing it for you. I'm not doing it for you. I'm sorry. Like, hey, yeah, I'm glad I didn't charge you anything. So I mean, it's free, but the fact is that I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because it's my life, and this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to express, and this is everything I've learned to be, and that's what I'm expressing. And if you're expressing that by being here, if you're expressing that by listening to this, if you're expressing that in general, just by going about your life, perfect, awesome. Thanks for taking us for the ride. You don't need us any more than you need all of those other books to tell you who you are and what to be. You are who you are when you're not thinking about it. Just plunge in, just do that. It's enough. It's more than enough. This has been a lot of fun. We're going to continue on Patreon. It's a tier 1 call today, so you can join for $5 a month and you get to chat with us twice a week. If you join tier 2, you can chat with us 5 times a week, which is a lot of fun. Tier 3 gets an exclusive 2-hour group every Sunday, which is great if you're looking for a bit more privacy and a smaller group to chat with. Tier 3 groups on Sunday afternoon are just the bomb. They're so fucking cool. I love them. I get so much in terms of insight, and there's sharing, and there's emotions, and it's great. And you get some merch. You get some sweaters and stuff by being a supporter. We give you a shout out and a credit roll of our video episodes, and you get a $350 discount on each and every of our retreats, which is well worth the money. So we're going to sign off here. We'll see you on Patreon very soon. Take care, everyone.